Hey guys, Ashok here, and in this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can greatly improve your visuals at a distance in Enderal VR using a small collection of tools including xLODGen, DynDOLOD 3.0, and SkyVRaan. I'll also be showing you how you can use these tools to really improve your LODs without compromising your performance. And here are a few simple screenshots showing you what we're going to be doing in this guide. In this first photo, I've taken a screenshot near the beginning of Enderal, just outside of Finn's camp. This is just the vanilla game with a handful of simple texture mods, and by default, the game, as you can see, just does not look very good when you're looking at things far off in the distance. The terrain, has almost no detail. It has very, jagged edges. You can see there's a piece of land that's clipping right into the lake, which doesn't even make any sense. The water looks very, very flat. There's no reflections whatsoever, and we can see almost nothing far up in the distance. We're supposed to be able to see a waterfall with some water wheels, and they're not even being drawn in the environment. Now, if we run a small collection of tools, including xLODGen, DynDOLOD, and SkyVRaan, we get something that looks like this. We now have a huge night and day difference in our visuals. The terrain looks tremendously better thanks to xLODGen. Everything looks more realistic. Thanks to DynDOLOD, we have better tree and object LODs. So if you look in the distance, we can see that there are water wheels far off on the horizon. We can see that there's a waterfall just to the left of center there in the distance. And thanks to SkyVRaan, the water looks tremendously better, and it has some really nice reflections, and it just looks like a completely different game. Next, I've taken a screenshot just outside of Arc, and as you can see, things just don't look very good in the vanilla game. The terrain doesn't look that great. We're supposed to be able to see, several towers in the distance. They're not all even being drawn, and we're supposed to have these snowy, pine trees up in the mountains on the right there, and they just look like a bunch of, white trees. They don't have hardly any detail at all. The water doesn't have any reflections. And again, after we run xLODGen, DynDOLOD, and SkyVRaan, we get something that looks like this. And again, we have a huge improvement in visuals. Thanks to xLODGen, the terrain looks much better, and thanks to DynDOLOD, we have greatly improved tree and object LODs. So if we, look off on the horizon, we can see that we have more towers that are, being drawn. And if we look up at the mountains on the right-hand side, we can see that the snowy pine trees also look much more detailed. The trees have a really nice detailed snowy look, and it just really, really makes the game feel alive when you're playing the game in VR, with all of these visual improvements. Now, I'd like to note that this guide is specifically centered around Enderal VR. Now, while I will be going over a lot of settings that are Enderal specific, the general steps I'm going to be walking you through should also work just fine in SkyVRaan VR as well if you're just playing the vanilla game. Also, if you've already set up Enderal VR using Wabbajack, the Wabbajack release is pre-configured with xLODGen, DynDOLOD 3.0, and SkyVRaan, so there's really no reason for you to redo everything that I'm going through in this guide. However, if you are modding the game on your own, or if you have installed the Wabbajack release but you've heavily altered the mod list in a way that has changed the game's world space, then you will want to run through everything I'm going to be covering in this video tutorial if you want to improve how your visuals look when you're looking at things far off in the distance. Now, this guide also expects that you are familiar with modding SkyVRaan VR using Mod Organizer 2, and that you already have Enderal VR installed using Mod Organizer 2. If you don't know how to do that, again, check my YouTube channel, and I have some other videos where I show you how you can get Enderal up and running in Mod Organizer. And having said that, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I will be covering quite a bit of material in this guide. Everything I go over, I will have summarized in step-by-step format in a README file, which you can find linked in the video description below. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and download all the tools that we need. So you can start by going to stepmodifications.org/forum. Once this page loads, go ahead and scroll down. You want to select the DynDOLOD and xLODGen page. Then scroll down a little bit more. You want to open up the forum threads for DynDOLOD 3.0. along with xLODGen. On the xLODGen page, you're going to go ahead and download xLODGen Beta 84. Go ahead and hit download. And once that's done, go to the DynDOLOD 3.0 page and scroll down, and you'll see links for everything that we need. So first, you want to make sure you download the DynDOLOD Standalone 3.0 by hitting Mega. You also want to download the DynDOLOD Resources SE 3.0 for SkyVRaan VR. So click the Mega link. You do need the Microsoft Visual C++ redistributable. So again, click on this. You need to download SKSE along with Papyrus Util VR. And you do not need the No Grass and Objects, and we don't need Majestic Mountains LOD pack, as Majestic Mountains is not fully Enderal compatible. So that's pretty much everything. So we'll go ahead and we'll go to these links. We're going to download, again, DynDOLOD Standalone 3.0. We're going to download the DynDOLOD Resources SE 3.0. We're going to download the Microsoft Visual C++ redistributable file. We're going to make sure we get the x64 version. So we'll click on that and hit download. We're going to go ahead and download SKSE VR build 2.0.12, the latest version. And finally, we need Papyrus Util SE, so we're going to select Files. Now, we don't need this main file here, but under Miscellaneous Files, you want to make sure you download the latest version. So we're just going to click Manual Download. Then we'll close this. And that pretty much is everything we need in terms of tools for DynDOLOD. Next, we want to download everything we need for SkyVRaan. So we're going to go ahead and navigate to .net.microsoft.com/download/.net/5.0. You want to navigate down and download the x64 version of the SDK. So we'll click download. Next, we want to go to nexusmods.com/Skyrim Special Edition. And you want to search for SkyVRaan. Then you're going to select SkyVRaan Shimmering VR Waters. And under the Files tab, you want to just download the latest version. You're also going to want to go to github.com/mutagen-modding/synthesis. Once this page loads up, go ahead and select the latest release, and then go ahead and download the zip file. Okay, once that's done, you're going to go back to nexusmods.com/Skyrim Special Edition. And you're going to want to search for SSEdit. You're going to have to probably go to page 2, then scroll down, select SSEdit, and then hit Files, and then go ahead and download the latest version. You don't need anything else to get started. However, I would highly recommend installing both terrain and tree mods for your game, because this is going to really, really improve how the game looks when you're looking at your visuals far off in the distance. Now, in this video tutorial, I'm going to be using 3 separate texture mods for improving the terrain in Enderal: the Noble Skyrim, the Tamrielic textures, and the Septentrional Landscapes mod. I find that all 3 of these mods combined do a fantastic, well-rounded job of really, really improving the architectural and the clutter and just the landscape textures where the game looks, tremendously better. I would highly recommend installing these. They're, in my opinion, the three best texture mods that seem to really gel well with Enderal in a really lore-friendly way. So first, we're going to go ahead and download Noble Skyrim. So you'll just want to scroll down, select Noble Skyrim Mod HD, select the Files tab, and you can download either the full pack 2K or you can get the full pack Performance Edition. I'm just going to go ahead and download the Performance Edition just because it still looks great, and this just means you're going to get the best performance. And then we're going to go ahead and download Tamrielic Textures. So go ahead and select Tamrielic Textures SE, then select the Files tab. And again, you're more than welcome to, download, any version you want. I'm going to go ahead and, again, just download the 1K version because they still, look great. And in my guide, I'm really going to try to focus on making sure you have the best performance possible since, in VR, it's really important, especially if you're playing the game wirelessly, that you keep your frame timing down and aren't eating up too much VRAM. So we're just going to use, the performance editions of everything. Finally, we're going to go ahead and search for the septentrional landscapes. So select Septentrional Landscapes SE, then select Files, and I'm going to go ahead and just download the 2K version for max performance. But again, you're more than welcome, to download the other versions. And by the way, you do not need either of these mods. The mods that are listed here are just soft requirements, and they're not needed, for using the septentrional landscapes. Okay, we're now downloading 3 different texture mods to improve how our terrain looks in Enderal. Just note that these mods are really only going to improve the textures of your terrain when you're looking at land up close. It's not going to improve how the textures look when you're looking at things, really far off in the distance. So to fix this, if you want your land textures to look good, far away, you need what's called a noise texture. Now there are all kinds of different noise textures on Nexus mods, and they have, different coloring. I find that the best noise textures are the ones that are included with the Perfect Terrain LOD mod. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to search for the Perfect Terrain LOD mod. Next, you're going to want to download the Perfect Terrain LOD mod. On this page, select the Files tab, and you'll see that there are all kinds of different terrain LODs for different landscape textures. And again, we don't care about the terrain LOD mod. You don't really need this, as we're going to be generating terrain LODs using xLODGen, which does a much better job than this mod. However, we still need one of these mods for its noise texture. As far as which one you need, because you only need one file here, you always want to download the terrain LOD that is associated with whatever landscape texture you have lowest in your load order in Mod Organizer 2. So in this video tutorial, I'm going to be using the septentrional landscapes as the lowest texture mod in our load order. So we're going to download Terrain LOD for septentrional landscapes. And this is just going to give us a noise texture that makes sure that our textures, far off in the distance in the game are going to match how our landscapes look when we look at things up close. Now, once we have, this downloading, there is one more thing that you need. I would highly recommend downloading a tree mod, as the pine trees in Enderal really don't look that good in the vanilla game. Now there are all kinds of different tree mods you can use. I think that the best ones, in my opinion, are the little tree mod and the enhanced vanilla trees. I'm just going to go ahead and use the enhanced vanilla trees in this video tutorial. They're my personal favorite. I just think they do a really good job of giving you really lush, pine trees. They give you also a really nice, snowy pine tree LOD in the distance up in the mountains. So we're going to go ahead and search for enhanced vanilla trees. then select Enhanced Vanilla Trees, SE, and then go to Files. There are several different versions of the mod. My personal favorite is the Lush Trees version. This just gives you a really nice filled out pine tree, and it really makes the game feel much more immersive in VR. So we're going to go ahead and hit manual download. And finally, that should do it, guys. That is pretty much everything that you need to get up and running. So we're just going to go ahead and close out of our web browser, and we'll just wait for all of our downloads to finish with the download. All right, now that all of our files are done downloading, we'll go ahead and simply install all the tools that we've collected. So we're going to go to our Downloads folder. The first thing you want to do is just go ahead and install the Visual C++ redistributable file. So we're going to double-click vc_redist.x64. We'll tick I agree and then hit install. You may get a pop-up asking if you want to allow the app to make changes. Just click yes to continue. Then hit close. Once that's done, we can go ahead and install the .NET-SDK-5.0. Once the pop-up window comes up, hit install. And again, you may get a pop-up asking if you want the app to allow changes to your device. Just click yes to continue. And then hit close. All right, next we're going to go ahead, we're going to extract SkyVRaan. We're going to extract xLODGen. We're going to extract the SSEdit files. We're going to extract the DynDOLOD standalone 3.0. And you're going to also want to extract synthesis. And we can also go ahead and select, the synthesis, DynDOLOD, standalone, SSEdit, xLODGen, and SKSE files. We'll just delete them as we don't need them anymore. And then we're going to open up our SKSEVR folder. And then we'll open up the SKSEVR folder in here. And we're going to copy all of these files here in the root directory. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to paste them in our SkyVRaan VR installation folder. So by default, you'll find that on your C drive. Then you're going to navigate to Program Files x86, Steam Apps, Common, and then SkyVRaan VR. You're going to go ahead and right-click and hit Paste, and then you can hit Replace if the files are already there. Next, you're going to take the data folder, and you want to rename this to something that just makes sense. You can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it SKSE_data. And you're going to want to open up Mod Organizer 2. And again, this video tutorial does expect that you already have Enderal VR set up in Mod Organizer 2. As you can see, I just have a fairly simple setup here. It's just Enderal, VR, all pre-configured here with just some of my, favorite optional mods. The only mods that are required are just these 8 mods here up at the top. Now, once you have Mod Organizer open, you want to make sure you take SE_data, and you want to drag it to the left window pane in Mod Organizer 2, and then you want to go ahead and install it right underneath Enderal VR. Now, as you can see, I already have SKSE_data pre-installed, so I don't need to do it again. So once that's done, we are all done setting up SKSE VR, so we can go ahead and delete this folder. The next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and install the Papyrus Util VR and the DynDOLOD Resources SE 3.0 mods as standard mods in Mod Organizer 2. So we're going to go ahead and drag these mods pretty high up in our load order. You want to make sure these are above any texture mods that you may have installed. So we're going to, again, drag these to the left window pane, pretty high up in your load order here. So we're going to install Papyrus Util VR just by dragging and dropping it to the left-hand window pane, and then you're going to make sure that it is ticked as enabled. And again, we're going to also do the same thing for DynDOLOD Resources, SE. So we will drag it over here pretty high up on our load order. We'll put it underneath Papyrus Util VR. When you get a pop-up window, just go ahead and click Next. And you can click Install. You don't need to tick any of these options for Enderal. And then go ahead and make sure that it is ticked, which means that it is enabled. Next, we're going to go ahead and install all of our landscape textures. So if you happen to have the Static Mesh Improvement mod installed, one thing to note is that you always want to make sure that the Static Mesh Improvement mod is above any other models and texture mods that you might be using. So when we go ahead and install our landscape textures, we're going to make sure they are underneath the SMIM mod. So first, we're going to go ahead and install Noble SkyVRaan. We're going to grab Noble SkyVRaan. We're going to drag it and drop it right underneath the SMIM mod. Go ahead and click OK. And again, if you're not using the Static Mesh Improvement mod, which is totally optional, just make sure that you install these texture mods above any other texture mods that you're using. So make sure you tick Noble SkyVRaan so it's enabled. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to drag the Tamrielic textures directly underneath Noble SkyVRaan. When you get the pop-up, you can go ahead and click Install. You don't need to tick any of these other options for Enderal. And then we will tick the mod to enable it, and then we're going to go ahead and install the septentrional landscapes. We're going to place this directly underneath Tamrielic textures, and then we'll click OK. And then we will tick the mod to enable it. And again, make sure these are installed in this exact order. I would recommend having septentrional landscapes on the bottom so that it takes precedence over all the other textures, and then you want Tamrielic textures and Noble textures to go ahead and fill in any textures in Enderal that aren't covered by the septentrional landscapes, as in my opinion, the septentrional landscape textures really are the best looking textures. Then we're going to scroll down, and at the very bottom of our mod loadout here, you want to go ahead and install the terrain LOD mod underneath any texture mods that you're using. So we're going to drag it to the left window pane here and click OK. And then we're going to go ahead and enable the terrain LOD mod, and we want to make sure it is under any other textures we're using, just so we know that our noise texture isn't going to get overridden by anything. Now, again, we only need this mod for the noise texture. We do not care about the actual terrain LOD mod, as it's completely redundant with running xLODGen for your landscapes, which is what we're going to be doing later on in this guide. So we're going to right-click and hit Open in Explorer for that mod, and then we want to delete everything except for the textures folder. So all we really care about is the noise.dds file, and you don't really need anything else, but you can go ahead and you can leave the meta.ini file if you want, just so you have the version numbers and everything listed in Mod Organizer. So once that's done, we're going to go back to our downloads folder here. We can delete the terrain LOD and the Noble, septentrional, and Tamrielic textures, since we have those already installed. We don't need Papyrus Util or DynDOLOD anymore. So next we're going to go ahead and install SkyVRaan. And we can install these pretty much anywhere we want in our loadout. In Mod Organizer 2, the load order isn't terribly important for SkyVRaan. Now when you get this pop-up window, I would go ahead and just click Next. I think the default settings look pretty good. Go ahead and click Next. Now I would make sure that you do not install the rocky riverbeds, as this feature, in my opinion, does not really improve the game that much, and it absolutely kills frame rate in VR. So again, if you're playing this game wirelessly in particular, using AirLink or virtual desktop with the Oculus Quest 2, it's really important to keep your frame timing down, and I find that Rocky Riverbeds makes it really, really hard to run this game at 90 hertz. So I would not install this feature. Go ahead and click Next. I would, however, recommend installing Rally's water foam. I would go with the 4K, and I would also tick the improved water normals for vanilla. These options seem to look really good in Enderal, and they don't seem to have any major impact on performance. Then go ahead and click Install. And then go ahead and tick SkyVRaan. And finally, we're going to go ahead and install the enhanced vanilla trees mod. Now, one thing I would like to note, if you are using, by any chance, the HD Dead Trees and Driftwoods mod, you want to make sure that you install Enhanced Vanilla Trees directly above it. Now again, this mod is completely optional. You don't have to use HD Dead Trees and Driftwoods with Enderal, but I would highly recommend this mod as it really improves the trees in beach environments, and it really enhances Enderal, I think, in a really great way. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to install Enhanced Vanilla Trees directly above HD Dead Trees and Driftwoods. Now, when you get the window that pops up, go ahead and click Next, and then Next. I would go ahead and just go with Default. And I would also personally recommend using Lush Trees Small. Now, you can use this large option here. In my opinion, the small trees really look better. I think the scale just seems like it looks a little bit more realistic, so I would just go ahead and use the first option and click Next. Now, on this screen, the original version of Enhanced Vanilla Trees was set up to use the vanilla, i.e. none option for the vanilla pine branch textures, which I really preferred, so I would go ahead and use the first option, but again, you're more than welcome to experiment with using some of these other versions of the pine branch textures. But again, I like how the vanilla option looks better, just my personal opinion though. And I would go ahead and use the rest of these settings just with their default values, and then go ahead and click Next. And then on the next screen, I would go ahead and tick Realistic Aspen Trees and SFO Snowy Pine Trees. This last option here is an awesome feature which gives you a really, really beautiful, snowy pine trees in the wintry environments of the game, and they also really improve how your trees look in the distance in, snowy mountain regions of the game. So go ahead and click Install, and then go ahead and, again, tick the mod here on the left to make sure that it's enabled. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set up all the tools that we've downloaded. Now, this is totally optional, but just for organizational purposes, I'm going to navigate to my mod organizer folder on my computer, which for me, I have in my games folder. Then I have mod organizer in a folder that I've called Enderal VR. On your computer, it might be somewhere else, but just go to whatever folder that you have mod organizer set up in, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new folder here called Tools. And I'm going to go ahead and place all of the tools that we've downloaded, such as xLODGen, DynDOLOD, Synthesis, and SSEdit. I'm going to put everything in this one folder just to keep things organized so we can keep track of where everything is at as we're continuing on with the tutorial here. So I'm going to navigate to our Downloads folder. And I'm going to take the xLODGen folder, and I'm going to move it here to our new tools folder, and then I'm going to do the same to the DynDOLOD folder here, along with the synthesis folder and the SSE folder here that we have. And then I'm going to go ahead and just delete all this stuff in our downloads folder, since we are pretty much done with everything that we downloaded earlier. And just to keep things simple, I'm just going to rename this to SSEdit. And now we have to take all of these tools and we need to add them to Mod Organizer 2. So we're going to go to the Tools option here, then we're going to click Executables. Then in the next window that pops up, you're going to click the plus button here, click Add from File. Okay, then we're going to navigate to our Mod Organizer 2 folder on my computer. Again, my Mod Organizer 2 folder is in my Games Enderal VR folder. And then we're going to go to the Tools folder that we just created, and we're going to select xLODGen. Then we're going to select xLODGen x64.exe and click Open. Then under Arguments, you need to type in -tes5vr space -o colon, and then in parentheses, c:/xLODGen_output, and then click Apply. Then we're going to click the plus icon again. We're going to click Add from File. You're going to want to go back to Tools and then select DynDOLOD. Now select TextGen x64.exe and click Open. Under Arguments, you want to type -tes5vr and then click Apply. Next, you're going to hit the plus icon, hit Add from File, select DynDOLOD x64.exe and then click Open. And then under Arguments, type -tes5vr and click Apply. Then click the plus icon again, click Add from File, go to Tools, navigate to Synthesis, and select synthesis.exe, and then click Open, and then Apply. And then finally click the plus icon, hit Add from File, go back to Tools, select SSEdit, and then click SSEdit.exe, and then click Open. Under Arguments, type again -tes5vr and then click Apply, and then click OK. And now, if you look in our drop-down window, we have all these new options here for running xLODGen, TextGen, DynDOLOD, Synthesis, and SSEdit, all of which we'll be using to patch the game with greatly improved LODs. Now there is, however, one final step that we have to do before we can use any of these tools. So there is one small quirk that you should be aware of regarding DynDOLOD. As of version 3.0 Alpha 44, the tool no longer allows you to leave any plugins active if they inject SkyVRaan Worldspace data into Enderal VR. If you attempt to run DynDOLOD 3.0 with any incompatible plugins active in your loadout, the tool will simply alert you to every plugin that is problematic, and then it will terminate, after which you will have to resolve every plugin conflict one by one. Now, if you have any plugin errors with DynDOLOD 3.0, there are two ways that you're going to have to deal with it. Number one, you may just be able to delete the plugin, as a lot of plugins are optional and they're not required to use the mods that they're bundled with. Or number two, if a plugin is required by its associated mod, we can go ahead and fix the plugin by deleting its cell and Worldspace data using xEdit, which will prevent the plugin from injecting SkyVRaan data into Enderal VR. And I will be explaining this in more detail, so if it's still clear as mud, it should all make sense in a few minutes. Now this step may be optional for you, depending on what mods you're using with Enderal VR in Mod Organizer 2, but if you're using any mods that are on this list, you cannot use DynDOLOD with any of these plugins active. It's going to cause the tool to error out and it'll terminate. So you just need to go to the installation folder for these mods in your Mod Organizer 2 folder, and then you need to delete any ESP files that are associated with these mods if you're using them. So I'm using 5 of these mods myself. I'm using Ario's Holy Bow along with Ember's XD, Glorious Doors of Skyrim, JS Instruments of Skyrim, and the Static Mesh Improvement mod. So to fix compatibility issues with these plugins, I'm going to go to my Mod Organizer folder in my computer, then I'm going to go to my Mods folder, and again, I'm just going to navigate to each mod that has a problematic plugin. Again, we know Ario's Holy Bow has a problem, so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to delete the ESP file. Next, I'm going to go to the Ember's XD mod, and again, I'm going to delete both ESP files here. Next, we're going to navigate to Glorious Doors of Skyrim. We're going to delete the ESP file. Then we're going to go to JS Instruments of Skyrim, and we're going to delete this ESP file. And next we're going to go to the Static Mesh Improvement Mod folder. And we're going to delete this ESP file. And we should be all set. Now I would recommend going into Mod Organizer 2, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to run DynDOLOD one time. Now we're not ready to run DynDOLOD yet, but you want to run this once just because it's going to check your mod list and it's going to confirm if your mod loadout is in fact error-free with no incompatible plugins active. So we'll go ahead and click Run with DynDOLOD selected in the drop-down bar here. And we still have a problem. It looks like we have a injected Worldspace error with scoped bows. So I'm going to go ahead and click Ignore. And this error here, Worldspace Editor ID MQP01 Home is changed to Tamriel. That's normal. You can ignore this error. It's really not a problem. We'll hit Ignore. And this is okay. We don't have any billboards yet. We haven't generated them with TextGen, so we'll ignore this error. That's to be expected. Okay, so there's only one mod that I'm using that has an error. And that's the Scoped Bows mod. Now, this mod is a little bit tricky to fix because it's not a simple texture mod, which means we can't just delete the ESP file like we did with all of our other texture mods. This mod, which I would really recommend using, it gives you scopes on your bows, which in my opinion, really improves, archery in the game. However, to use this mod with DynDOLOD, we have to fix the plugin using xEdit. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to select SSEdit, and then we're going to hit Run. And then we're going to click OK, and then we'll hit OK. And then we just have to wait for it to process all of the mods that we have in our loadout. All right, once it's finished loading all the mods, we can go ahead and click the Scoped Bows mod, which is the only mod that is problematic for us. You want to tick the plus sign here on the left, and then to make this mod compatible with Enderal, we want to delete the cell data, so click Cell, and then right-click, and then hit Remove. And then it'll give you a warning. Just go ahead and hit Yes, I'm absolutely sure. And then click Yes. Next, click Worldspace, and then right-click, and hit Remove. And then hit Yes when prompted. And then you can hit the icon up here with the bar, so you're going to hit Save, and then click OK. Then go ahead and hit the X here to close out of SSEdit. Okay, now if we go and we select DynDOLOD and we hit Run, okay, go ahead and hit Ignore. Again, like I said, this error message is just a warning. It's to be expected, and we can just click Ignore. And again, we haven't generated our billboard, so we can click Ignore. And we're all set. So we didn't get any plugin errors. There are no plugins anymore that are injecting Skyrim Worldspace data into Enderal's Worldspace. So our loadout should now be complete. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of DynDOLOD. Next, we want to go ahead and launch Skyrim VR one time. So in the drop-down bar here, you want to make sure you have SKSE selected. And again, you always have to have this selected to start the game. You're going to select SKSE and then hit Run. And we just need to launch the game one time to create configuration data, which is required by DynDOLOD. Once you're at the menu, you can immediately exit, so you can just scroll down and hit Quit. Alright guys, that pretty much wraps up what is, in my opinion, the toughest part of this guide, which is getting all of the tools we need set up for using xLODGen, DynDOLOD, and SkyVRaan, along with getting our loadout finalized to use all of these tools properly. Alright guys, we are finally ready to run xLODGen, DynDOLOD 3.0, and SkyVRaan. Now, before we get started, there is still one more thing you may optionally need to do if you have ever used any of these tools before in the past. If you have older configuration files related to these tools, you'll want to go ahead and delete them, as it's really important that we run these tools with new, clean configuration settings. So first, you're going to want to go to your C drive, uh, and I will show you where your config files are. Again, if you've never used these tools before, you can skip this step. But if you've used xLODGen or DynDOLOD, you'll want to go to your users folder, and then you're going to go to your username. And then you're going to go up to the app data folder. You may have to key it in manually as it's usually hidden. And then you're going to go to local, and then you're going to look for a SkyVRaan VR folder. So if you see these two files here, these are your old configuration files for DynDOLOD and xLODGen. So we're just going to delete them. So we will be using a new clean configuration when we run these tools for the first time in this tutorial. Next, we're going to go back one folder, and you're going to want to go to your temp folder, and then you're going to go down to S, and we're looking for synthesis. And if you have a synthesis folder here, go ahead and delete it. If you leave this folder here and it's outdated, if you try to run a newer version of synthesis, you're going to actually get a blocking error. So it's really important that you delete any old versions of synthesis that might be hiding in your temp folder here. So once that's done, we're going to go ahead and launch Mod Organizer. All right, once Mod Organizer loads, go ahead and select xLODGen in your drop-down list, and then go ahead and click Run. All right, once the xLODGen window comes up, you'll want to tick all of the world spaces in this left window pane with the exception of the first option. So you're going to go ahead and tick everything except for this MQP01 home. Now the reason you have to leave this unticked is this is a unique world space that has some sort of a weird conflict with Tamriel in vanilla Skyrim. So if you leave it ticked, it's going to cause these tools to actually fail. They won't ever complete. So you'll want to also go ahead and untick objects and trees, as we're going to be using DynDOLOD 3.0 to generate our tree and object LODs, as it does a much better job at it. However, DynDOLOD does not do anything with terrain, so we do have to go ahead and tick terrain LOD, and we're going to use xLODGen to improve how our terrain looks in the distance in Enderal. Now you can adjust your terrain LOD settings for LOD4, LOD 8, LOD16, and LOD32. I find for the most part that the default values do seem to work really well with Enderal. However, if you leave the settings at their defaults, it is going to cause some weird Z-fighting along shorelines, which means you're going to get weird, flickering effects with some of the terrain near water. So I found that in order to fix this, you need to set Optimize Unseen to a value of around 500. And you also need to tick Protect Borders. So once you have everything configured like I have on my screen here, go ahead and click Generate. And this may take several minutes to complete. Once you see LOD generation complete, you can go ahead and close the xLODGen window. And then you're going to navigate to your C drive. And you'll see that we have a new folder here called xLODGen Output. We're just going to right-click on it and hit Cut. Then you want to paste it into your Mods folder in your Mod Organizer 2 folder. So again, for me, that's in Games, Enderal VR. And then you're going to go to your Mods folder. Then you want to just right-click and hit Paste. We're just installing this xLODGen Output as a regular mod. So now if we come back to Mod Organizer 2, we can push F5. This is going to refresh all of our mods, and then if we scroll to the very bottom, we'll see that we have a new mod here, xLODGen output. We're just going to go ahead and tick it to enable it. And then we're going to go ahead and run TextGen. So select TextGen from your drop-down list and then go ahead and hit run. All right, if you get an error message on stitched object LOD textures, just go ahead and hit ignore. That's perfectly okay. And when this window comes up, you want to tick HD tree. And then you're going to go ahead and click start. All right, once TextGen finishes, you can go ahead and hit exit TextGen. Next, we're going to go ahead and go back to our mod organizer folder. You're going to want to go to your tools folder, and then you're going to select DynDOLOD, and you'll see that we have a new folder in here called TextGen Output. So you're going to select it and then right click and hit cut. And then we're going to move this to our mods folder. So again, just select mods. You can right click on mods and then click paste. Now you can go back to Mod Organizer 2 and then push F5. This will refresh our mods list, and now we see we have TextGen output here. So we're going to go ahead and tick it, make sure that it is at the very bottom underneath xLODGen. And what this TextGen mod does is it has textures and billboards, which will be used by DynDOLOD, and this just makes sure that things far away that they gel really well with how they also look up close when we're playing Enderal. So now we're going to go ahead and select DynDOLOD, and we're going to select Run. And we can go ahead and click Ignore. This message really isn't anything serious. And once this window comes up, go ahead and click Advanced. Now there are several things you're going to want to change here. Number one, you're going to want to tick all of the world spaces in this window up in the left, and then you're going to want to select High. Now I'm running a 3070. I haven't had any issues using high settings, although if you have a weaker graphics card, you might want to experiment with using low or medium settings. And then you're also going to want to select Ultra. This is going to give you ultra trees, which really improves how your trees look in the distance. And you're also going to want to untick occlusion data. What this option does is it generates data which is used for fixing small rectangular holes that are really only a problem in Tamriel. I haven't seen any cases where this data is even necessary for playing Enderal VR. And finally, if we scroll down in this list here, under Tree, you can double click to bring up the mesh rules. Now from this window, we can greatly improve how trees look in the distance in Enderal. If you go to the official forum for DynDOLOD 3.0, there are recommended settings for the static object LOD options. It is recommended that you set LOD level 4 to level 0. This is going to give you a static 3D tree for LOD level 4. It looks quite a bit better than using a billboard. And then we can also use billboard 2 for LOD level 8 and for LOD level 16, and that will give you better looking billboards. And unfortunately, while these settings do look really good, they do give you a bit of a hit on performance. Walking around Arc with these settings, I'm seeing on my RTX 3070 a good 5 to 10 frame per second drop, which in my opinion is pretty bad, especially when you're playing the game wirelessly over VR using AirLink or virtual desktop. So I really prefer just leaving these at their default values of billboard 1, as I find that this still looks pretty good and you get much better performance in really huge open areas. So I would go ahead and just leave these at defaults, but you're more than welcome to again change these to level 0 in billboard 2 and billboard 2 if you want your trees to look quite a bit better. So go ahead and click OK to close this window, and once you have your world spaces ticked and you have ultra ticked and you have occlusion data unticked, go ahead and click OK. And again, this process will take several minutes. All right, once DynDOLOD is done running, you can go ahead and click Save and Exit. Next, we're going to go ahead and install it like a regular mod. So we're going to, again, go back to our mod organizer folder. Then you're going to go to Tools, and then select DynDOLOD. And we have a new folder here called DynDOLOD Output. So just right-click on it and hit Cut. Then go back to your mod organizer folder, and then you're going to select Mods, and then right-click and hit Paste. Now we can go back to mod organizer 2. We can push F5. This will refresh our mod list, and we'll see that we now have DynDOLOD output here. So we're going to go ahead and tick the mod so it's enabled, and then if we scroll down on the right window pane here, we'll see that we have a new plugin called DynDOLOD.esp. And again, just make sure that it is enabled, and then you're going to want to select the drop-down window, and you're going to select Synthesis. Now there is still one optional step that you can perform before running Synthesis. I have seen some comments in the Enderal channel on Discord that there may be a compatibility issue with Enderal VR and the Enhanced Vanilla Trees plugin here. Now I have done some testing with this plugin where I've kept it active while playing Enderal. I haven't noticed any problems with it. It seems to work just fine. But again, I've also found that this plugin isn't really necessary either. So if you want to be on the safe side and just avoid not having to worry about one extra plugin or having to worry about any potential compatibility issues, you can safely just right-click on this ESP file and then hit Open Origin and Explore, and then you can just delete this plugin, and the mod will still work just fine. Now, however, if you do delete the plugin, you will have to go to your Meshes, Landscape, Trees folder, and you have to remove the srg underscore prefix from all the files that are in this directory. Now I have a little tool called Name Twister, so I'm just going to pull it up here. And it allows us to quickly rename all of these files. All right, so now that we've removed the srg underscore prefix from all of these NIF files, the Enhanced Vanilla Trees mod will work just fine without having the plugin. Again, I don't know that that step is necessary, but it doesn't seem to hurt anything either. Also, just note that if you ever want to rerun xLODGen and DynDOLOD, you will need to go ahead and reinstall the Enhanced Vanilla Tree mod to restore the plugin, which you have to have active when you're running the tools that we just ran. Next, we need to go ahead and select the right window pane, and we need to push F5 to refresh our mod list so Mod Organizer can see that we have in fact deleted the Enhanced Vanilla Trees plugin. And once we've refreshed everything, you can now go ahead and run Synthesis. Go ahead and select Run. Then select SkyVRaan VR on the far right. And once the Synthesis window comes up, go ahead and select the Git Repository button here on the second to the left. Next, search for SkyVRaan. And you want to press the little plus icon when you mouse over the SkyVRaan Auto Patcher. Then go back to Git Repository, and we're going to search for SkyVRaan again. And then hit the little plus icon that comes up after you mouse over the SkyVRaan Weather Patcher. And then after a few seconds, you're going to get a little icon down here, and then you can click Run. And what this does is it's going to go ahead and it's going to patch the game so that SkyVRaan is basically active. And if you don't run this synthesis patcher, SkyVRaan won't do anything as a mod. So you have to run this tool to get the reflective effects on your water and the distance in Enderal. So once this is done, it'll say completed, and then you can go ahead and close the tool. Now, if you look in the plugin list here on our right window pane, you'll see that we have a new plugin called synthesis.esp, which is in our overwrite folder. So in the left window pane, we want to right-click on overwrite. We're going to hit create mod, and then you're going to type in synthesis underscore output, and then click OK. You can call this anything you want, but I just like to call it something that makes sense. Now we have a new mod, which is our synthesis output, which is what enables SkyVRaan. So we have beautiful reflective water. We're going to go ahead and tick synthesis, and we'll also see that synthesis.esp is now active as a plugin right underneath DynDOLOD. And you always want to make sure that you have DynDOLOD and synthesis in that order at the very bottom of your plugin list on the right-hand window pane. Now you can technically run synthesis first before you run DynDOLOD, and if you were to do that, you would want to go ahead and just place the synthesis output above DynDOLOD. You just want to make sure that your mods and plugins are listed in the order that you generate everything. So that should do it, guys. That pretty much is everything you need to know. We are totally done. So we have successfully patched the game with xLODGen and DynDOLOD and synthesis. So now you should have really beautiful terrain and tree and object LODs, and your water will have really beautiful reflections. And we are now ready to go ahead and jump into the game. So let's go ahead, and we're going to set the drop down to SKSE, which always has to be set to play the actual game. And then we're going to go ahead and hit run, and we'll see how everything looks. Alright guys, we are standing just outside of Arc, and our tree and object LODs have both been greatly improved by DynDOLOD 3.0. So we have some really nice detail with our towers in the background here. If we look at the mountain just ahead of us, we have some really beautiful snowy pine LODs. So that should do it, guys. I think that pretty much sums up everything you need to know to get up and running in Enderal VR using xLODGen, DynDOLOD, and SkyVRaan. If you have any questions or run into any issues, drop me a line in the comments below.